Item is the Hagerstown Ice and Sports Complex facility expansion. Rodney?
Afternoon. Thank you first for making time in your schedule for this discussion. I appreciate that. This isn't a regular work session time, so thank you. You know the players here with me is Paul, Dan, Pete, all various levels of officials at the Ice and Sports Complex. Every time we come in October and talk about the rink and talk about the year in review, it always ends with a discussion about where the rink is headed. And I think under the leadership of some of these gentlemen, the rink is as healthy now as it's been since I can remember and what I've been involved with. And I appreciate their efforts on that. But as we talk about the rink every year, it's additionally another sheet of ice will eventually be something that we want to pursue. And tonight they want to begin that discussion with you to talk about what information you would need to help make that decision, what kind of feedback, reports, studies you want done to be able to help make that decision, because they're going to show you that there's a growing need there, and we're not looking for any final decisions tonight, but we're certainly looking for your feedback. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to you, Paul, and
okay.
Please proceed.
All right. Well, thank you very much, City Council and Mr. Mayor, as well, for having us back. We did present the RFQ that you reviewed, I guess, about a month or so ago. You decided not to go with the full plan, and we understand why. But where we are right now, I've had several conversations with Rodney, is we are really at capacity, and that's the reason why you see so many people behind me right now. They're all participants with the rink from all our different user groups. And we don't want to get to a point where we're turning people away, and that's pretty much where we are right now. We really need to grow. We really do. And a couple of years ago, you actually asked us to put together a concept for a second sheet of ice. And actually, when the rink was built back in, I think it was 96 or 97, there was an original plan to have a second sheet of ice as part of it, but it only became one. And there's room out there for it. And we kind of got sidetracked a little bit with the VICTA study that was done to determine whether you needed turf fields and hard courts, and we jumped into that as well. And we're still willing to go down that road if you really decide that you want us to do that. But at this point, we need to have a second sheet of ice. And we have some rough estimates as to what the cost is going to be for that. I think we told you for the whole thing, we were looking at somewhere between $14 and $16 million. We wanted to try to get half the money raised privately, the other half raised through public support, which would include, we thought, the city, the county, and the state. And listening at the last meeting that we attended, I know one of your reservations was that if you, the city, went to either the county or to the state, they might want to try to place it in a different location that's not inside the city limits. And we love where the ice rink is currently, and we don't want it to be someplace else. And it makes more sense to us to have it built right there on city land as well. So the just rough numbers, if we did just a facility very similar to what we have right now, we're looking at somewhere between probably $4 and $6 million for the ice sheet alone, without the other parts that we were talking about. We have a couple of other ideas that we could maybe include part of either the turf or the hard courts if that needed to be done, all the ways up to the original concept that we had to start with. We've already started a fundraising effort actually just a week ago, and we feel very strongly that we're going to be able to contribute a lot of the money for the ice rink, for sure. We don't know what kind of money we could get from the soccer community, from the other the volleyball community, the basketball community or not, but we feel very strongly that we're going to be able to raise a significant amount of money for this project. So we are looking for direction from you as to what you really want us to do. We want to, at this point, we don't want to, I don't want to say that we don't have any patience, but we're out of time. We literally, I would really like to introduce a couple of people here just to let them talk to you and let you know what we need. If you don't mind, can I maybe have Chad come up first? Yeah, Chad is our hockey director. He's been with us for, what, about 3.5 years now?
Yeah, I believe it'll be 4 years in May.
Okay. And he's been charged with developing our youth programs, developmental youth programs. We've always had a travel program at the rink, but he's been charged with teaching kids how to play hockey. We call it Learn to Play Hockey. We have a program that Pete helped set us up with the Washington Capitals. And I just want maybe Chad to just give you some raw numbers of what we've had come through the rink just in the last year.
Yeah, so within the past year, we've grown to, we have 2 youth rec programs, one at 9 o'clock on Saturdays in the morning, the other is at 10. We have approximately 75 kids between the 2 programs. Additionally to that, we have a Learn to Play program, like Paul alluded to, and that's through the Washington Capitals. It's been a huge success for that program. We have 3 sessions for it. Each session we've had over 30 kids, so that's approximately close to 100 new kids, brand new, straight out the street, kids that have come into the program. We've been able to retain a lot of these kids in the programs and filter them through into additional programs as well. But like Paul alluded to, the ice, with so many new kids coming in, the ice has gotten very tight, and a definite need for more sessions to be available. We also have a power skating program that we run every Monday night at 6:30. We have approximately 40 to 50 kids per session in that. So again, the ice is very tight for those kids. Along with that, Bryce Timberlake, who's here with the West Virginia Vipers, has come to us and asked that we do a power skating session specifically to his Vipers team. But the problem is there's no ice to do that. And then in addition to those programs, we also have what's called a Junior Bulldogs program, and they play in what's called the Capital Corridor Hockey League, which is a travel rec league. They play 6 home games, 6 away games against other rec-type teams. We started with the U10 team 2 years ago. This past year we had a U10 and U12 team, and next year we foresee having a U10, U12, and U14 team as well. So ice time again is at a premium. It's very tough to find spots for those.
Each one of these programs that Chad's talking about takes up ice time. It takes up an ice slot. 3 years ago, when the Capitals started the Learn to Play program, this is through the entire NHL, getting new kids into ice hockey was a very difficult thing. It was usually word of mouth. If a friend played hockey, then they would get somebody. Now we're getting 100 new kids each hockey season into our ice rink, and they stay there. They join teams. Like Chad said, he has started 3 new teams. Each team needs an ice slot. Then they have games. Games need ice slots. And that's where the ice time has evaporated, is because of the growth in hockey. And one of the reasons there was this growth, in addition to the popularity specifically of our rink and things that Chad has done and others have done, is the NHL has realized that if they don't start growing hockey at the grassroots level, then the talent's going to dry up. You have the Washington Capitals that 10 years ago or 11 years ago weren't that popular. Well, now with Ovechkin, it is called the Ovechkin effect. You now have people going into the NHL from this area. The Caps just drafted somebody from the Reston area. That was unheard of 10 years ago. And so that's where the ice slots get evaporated, because we're able to retain these kids, and they join teams, and the teams expand, because each team can only have 12, 13 players.
Right. The point is that none of this existed 3 years ago. These are all new kids, they're all new programs, and we're exploding, which has also created another not a problem, it's a good problem to have. It's become a feeder program for the travel program as well. So as these kids progress and they get better, they end up playing in the travel program. And the travel program used to have 5 or 6 teams, and maybe, was it Chris? Is Chris here?
Yes.
Okay. Chris, you want to speak just for a second to
Chris
that
is
part?
with the
He's with-
Hagerstown Youth Hockey Association, which is the travel program.
And just to anticipate, just to give you an idea of where we were before, what we just had this past year, which was a growth, and what we're anticipating next year.
Okay, currently we have 7 teams. We're anticipating probably growing at least 2 more teams for boys and another team for girls. This has become huge in the area. We have a lot of kids that are traveling, going up to college from this program as well. So it's a feeder program from the travel sense. When we go away a lot, when my son plays on the upper team, on the AA team, when we go out to all these other communities and we spend money. They come to do the same thing here. So we have teams like Princeton came to us, spent overnight, they were in the hotels, spent a lot of money for food and everything as well in the area. So it's not just that we need the ice, it's the whole area needs the ice as well. So you see all these different areas that come into this, and it's growing big time. So what we're asking for is, we need more ice, because the in-house programs are growing, the travel clubs are growing. We have the disabilities with the Kodiaks, with the sled hockey, they're growing. The ice skaters, the figure skaters, they're growing. So there's an explosion going on with this ice, and we just don't have the ice time to do it. So.
Great point. And with having 2 sheets of ice, it opens up the opportunities also for a lot of tournaments, for people outside to come in for tournaments, and which is going to help with local hotels. When you have a tournament, it's not unusual to have 6 to 10 teams come from other areas that are going to help support the Hagerstown area as well. So, Mike, is there anything you wanted to say with the Kodiaks?
We're playing at 6:30 in the morning, every Saturday morning for our practice and our weekend.
Yeah, we're opening the rink very, very early and staying very, very late, which is a good problem to have, but with the 100 new kids that we have that have just come in, we have to have a place for them to go next year. We don't want to recruit them and then end up having them go to Frederick, for example, to play. We want them to stay here, we want them to be happy.
Hey, Paul, may I say something as well?
Sure.
So, I'm Bryce Timberlake with the West Virginia Vipers. So this is our 4th season. Our closest sheet of ice in West Virginia is 3.5 hours away in Morgantown. So that's the closest ice that we have. We have gone from about 14 kids when we got started, 4 seasons in the spring. We're now up to over 42 kids. About 10 of them are from Pennsylvania, 10 are from Virginia, the other 20 are from West Virginia. We're actually leaving out this, on Thursday, traveling out to high school nationals in Cleveland, Ohio. The first West Virginia team to actually represent West Virginia at high school nationals. So without the rink being, at Hagerstown, I think I'm being one of the, new user groups at the rink. This is the best thing that we've got, and it's the only thing that we have to be able to participate. Thank you.
I would mention, just like Bryce said, a little over 4 years ago, this team didn't exist. And now our rink is their home rink. Their practices are there, their games are there. When they play teams from other areas, they come here.
They were actually a byproduct of the youth rec league. They came that way.
Yeah. So, again, it's growing leaps and bounds, and we're bringing people, families, money, taxpayers, well, not taxpayers, we're bringing revenue generators into the.
Taxpayers.
Yeah, into the area, and all
Pay the
these things, a
hotel
lot
bill.
of these things, a lot of these teams, a lot of these groups didn't exist 4 years ago. We have a women's-only hockey team, the Mayhem, that play games in both home and away, that didn't exist 4 years ago.
just to clarify, the 14 to 16 million you mentioned, that's for the multi-discipline sports facility, but for the.
The two levels, yeah.
The two levels. For the second sheet of ice, which is the critical need right now, you were saying that's about a 4 to 6 million.
4 to 6 million.
Okay. And it sounds like, I mean, just to put it in the vernacular of my own business, you know, I always try to concentrate on core competencies, and it sounds like you know what your core competency is. It's the ice, and you need another sheet of ice right now. I don't know if we want to wait for this whole Victus study and everything else to pan out, and let that delay year after year after year until we finally get to that point.
I would agree with Austin. Matter of fact, it's almost an analogy to the Peter principle. I would hate to see folks who know everything they're doing about ice hockey suddenly get a second sheet of ice as an adjunct to this huge project. I think they are standalone entirely. I think it would be much easier for you guys to raise money if you're raising it for a second sheet of ice, period, because then you have a targeted group to be going to. We all know what happens when you get too many cooks in the kitchen. We've all been there in this project. And I just want to say, you know, things get lost in history. But this ice rink, how long has it been in existence now?
21 years.
20 years, yeah.
Okay. And it came about basically because of two gentlemen. I know Mike Day was one. Does anybody else remember the other?
Walter Dill.
Walter Dill, okay. And Walter Dill and Michael came in here and they spoke and they argued and they explained how bad this community needed an ice rink and all the things that would be done and be able to. And there were at least 3 council members at that time who said, yeah, we need to do it. As you all know, it went through some very rough periods, including from Walter. Unfortunately, I've never understood what happened, but unfortunately, the road isn't named after him anymore. It used to be. So it's sort of ironic how sometimes the ones who give birth to a project, to some degree, walk away from it. However, that's how this project got started, by citizens coming forward, presenting a plan, talking about a need, saying it can be done. And when the thing almost fell to pieces, you guys stepped forward and said, we know how to do this. And you have done it. There is no question about it. I think the worst thing that we could ever do is even talk about a big project when what we need is a second sheet of ice. That's what we need. And the faster we can do it, the better off we are. And I would only say to you, the faster you can come in with a substantial amount of fundraising, the faster you'll be able to get the city on board. It's budget time, and it's a horrible time to talk about anybody around here about millions of dollars when everybody's trying to figure out how to just meet this budget. In the same respect, you guys have put together something that pays for itself. And when you talk about the additional people, I would anticipate you're gonna look at that being a revenue source for one. And you know, whether you have to adjust prices or not, this is obviously would be a bonded project that I would anticipate would be paid out over a 20-year period. So, you know, everybody's got to get their pencils out, figure out how much it's really going to cost, figure out how much you guys can raise, what you're really going to need in money, and we can start talking turkey. I'm all for it, but those are the things that are necessary. You won't have people on this body, in my opinion, especially keeping in mind next year is an election year, okay? It's a reality. I'm not running again, so I can talk about politics all day long. And the reality is the odds of having incumbent council people raise taxes in election year is pretty slim generally. And so we need to figure out how we fund it and how we finance it. You'll find you have a vote here for it. I think you guys know that, but you need more than just me.
Well, and with those thoughts in mind, Can y'all give us specifics as to what specific targets that we need to come back to y'all with exactly what information you need from us in order to greenlight the project? And again, we understand this isn't, we'll be back next week, with these answers because it'll be months. But we need to know exactly what you need from us in order to talk turkey with y'all. So can you tell us what that would be, so we can work towards it?
I mean, if you're talking about, let's just split the difference. Let's say it's a $5 million project. So $5 million project, every $1 million in our bond issuance is roughly $100,000. So if you were to bond that $5 million, you're looking at $500,000 that the cost would be. So without understanding what portion of that $5 million that you as a private organization could raise and bring forth to accomplish that task, it would be difficult for us to say how we would plug in that remainder. And I'll give
Okay,
you this.
our goal is half of it.
Okay.
So just using your average of $5 million, we're assuming that our target for fundraising is $2.5 million.
Well, and so then you get $2.5 million that the
it's
city has
$250,000.
to come up with. That's $250,000 a year, or depending on the tax rate, every year for the 20-year term of the bond, assuming that the second sheet is solvent, meaning that we're not going to assume, again, those responsibilities of utilities and other things for the duration of that bond, as occurred, during the first iteration. And I'll be very frank about this because it is budget time, so, the preliminary evaluation that I have is this year, we started off with about a $2.5 million gap in our budget, in the city's budget, and we're using roughly, if I can just speak plainly about the information that we've gotten, we're using roughly $1.5 million worth of funds to close that gap that are generally sort of one-time opportunities for closure, whether it's debt reserves or fund reserves or, savings. And so we still have that issue again next year, like we did the year before, and we'll have again the year after that. And I don't think that you're going to have anyone in this year or the next year, especially given that it's an election year, say that they're going to raise taxes, let alone for that $1.5 million that we'll have next year to close that gap that we know exists, to do those things above and beyond those necessary services that we've got to close that gap to provide. And so that's the conundrum, frankly, that we will find ourselves in. And that doesn't include, I know Mayor Geisbert used to say, why can't we do them all? Here's the reality. We just had the Maryland Theater come in and ask for funding, and so, we have to identify that. We've got, a number of different projects downtown going on, and so, this is one of many of those items of a very limited pool of funding that we have available. The reality is, we take in about $28 million a year in taxes, and about 24 or 25 of that goes out for public safety. So we're left with about $4 or $5 million to fund everything else that we need to fund in the city, all those other, sort of necessary city services, and still find funding for, economic development opportunities, let alone, those other public amenities. And I think that's the difficult reality of that type of proposal.
And we all understand the difficult position that you're in. And putting that aside, and I don't mean to make light of it, but we're not even there yet. What we're asking from y'all is, tell us specifically what you need from us,
Sure.
so that we can make a presentation to you
So,
that you can evaluate whether it makes sense or not. Now, it may not make sense in your economic climate at that time. Hopefully it will. Hopefully we'll make it so it makes sense. But in order to get to that point, we need to know what it is you're looking at
So-
for us to, just as a for instance.
Sure.
Whereas we're looking at a second sheet of ice, and that's our primary goal. But does it make sense for us to design the second sheet of ice so that if at some point in the future, maybe it's 10 years down the road, whatever it is, that we have it, the original design set up, so that we can incorporate the indoor multi-purpose field with the connector from the upper level of the Fairgrounds Park down to where the two rinks come together?
I think it's fair to say that there is only one single solitary issue that this body is going to have, whether it's this body or it's the next administration. It's the dollar sign.
Okay.
It's ultimately how much money is the elected body going to have to set aside every year for 20 years towards this project. And clearly, the less money we have to set aside and the more you leverage it with other money, the more, not to be stupid, but if you came in with $5 million and said, we got the money, we want your go-ahead to put it there, I think you'd have people jumping up and down, how fast can you build it? And I don't mean to be sarcastic
No,
about
no.
that, but there's a sliding scale between that total $5 million and your understanding of what $250,000 a year for 20 years means. Because one of the things you're asking the body to do when you ask for that is to commit to other administrations a $250,000 a year for a long time. I think everybody would be very interested to see a business plan. To answer the question that Kristen has is, can you do this not only in a solvent manner, but ultimately will you be able to turn a profit towards potentially helping with the debt service in the long run?
And I think that's where I'm at too. I support a second sheet of ice. I know we need one, and I know it's a necessity in this whole area. I think a business plan would be a good start. And then are you considering hiring an outside fundraising agency, kind of like what Maryland Theater did?
We are, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think that would be a good idea. I just know how successful they were right off the bat as soon as they
Right,
hired.
we have some contact
Because
information.
fundraising is difficult, but can be very
Obviously,
successful.
the more you could get the capitals interested in anything with the
Yeah.
city of Hagerstown, is becoming some type of, true partners with them and us, giving them whatever we could give them and assistance on a lot of levels, whatever that assistance be.
I was just in touch with them yesterday about the National Night Out on August 4th or 6th, I forget the date, and they're working at putting it on their calendar.
Good. And obviously, the more you can get from the capitals, even if it's absolutely zero money.
Oh, it'll be zero
But
money.
just showing up and pushing this and seeing what they can do.
Just to answer your question more specifically too, you asked, are we looking for you to design this facility so that we have the possibility of putting a second level on it, basketball courts and indoor turf facility or whatever? My personal feeling on that is that, anytime you structurally go to that level, you're dramatically increasing the cost. And I think that what I'm hearing here today is the overall overriding issue is the second sheet of ice and some kind of enclosure insulated to house that and give you that facility. So I would say trying to plan to build the structural integrity to build a second floor later on is probably, it's probably going to push you into some cost level that.
Well, and that's why we asked the
Yeah.
question, because
Yeah, I
we
agree.
don't want to add any cost that's not needed, but we also didn't want to go back to the architect and say, design it this way.
No,
And
but
then at the
knowing-
next meeting
knowing
with you,
the-
have
yeah.
to say, well, what did you
No.
consider this? Because that's
Knowing the
time
number
and
one
money.
impediment being money, that's what
Yeah.
you want to do is get this thing as affordable as it can be.
And in Frederick, I mean, they had 2 sheets of ice, but they no longer utilize one. Is that
No, they
correct?
still use both.
They do? Okay.
The one thing that, with the money issues that I personally just want to give out is think of the community. We have a bunch of user groups behind us. 3-4 years ago, most of these guys didn't know each other. And we're growing to the point where we're all going to do what we can on our end to raise the money. But at the max capacity is for the community. We're building a community. We're doing something in Hagerstown that really hasn't been done. Like, yeah, the rink's been here 20 years now, but this rink's been big over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And I want to see that community keep building, and able for the relationships to grow, and for us to create more, just like employees-wise. You know, we have 20, 25 employees right now. We do the second sheet, you know, we can have up to 50. That's more jobs in the community. That's more advertising opportunities for other members in the community, to really help.
Yeah, and I think most of our employees live in Hagerstown.
I would say probably 80% of our employees are in community, and so I think that that would be a huge help for the community itself.
Do y'all have, is there anything else we can say, should say, questions we can answer for you, concerns?
The business plan you're referring to should be not only the plan to get it built, but also to operate it.
Right,
Just to be
that's the
clear about
idea,
that.
is, yeah, is see the operational, what you would project.
And there's other people you're gonna be talking to too, as far as where the public sector funds are coming from, is that right? CVB, possibly county, possibly state.
Talk to Greg Snook in the hallway.
And I think it's important to note, I'd say this on all of our sort of amenity oriented projects, our citizens are going to have an opinion, you know what I mean? And that opinion is going to have an effect on those deliberations of this body. And while I appreciate the fact that, there are a lot of folks here from a lot of parts of different communities, when we get to these amenity type projects, and I don't care whether it's a turf facility or the golf course staying open or, a new baseball stadium or a sheet of ice, what we're being asked to do is commit our citizens, the folks that live in the corporate boundaries of the city, to 20 years worth of debt for an amenity. And, we're going to have to look, at least to some degree, to those citizens who are being asked, for this representation of them, to place them in that position, whether they have the interest, of their fiscal dollars being done so. And so I think that that's important, while I certainly appreciate, that it'll definitely, add jobs, it'll definitely add, amenity growth, that court of public opinion is going to be out there, and so I would say that you're gonna have to go out and, I don't care whether it's for the baseball stadium or whatever, you gotta go out and build some of that community support, for that type of purpose.
So fundraising is the primary.
Well, and also, you said other government agencies, CVB, we've been very frustrated in Hagerstown about the lack of us getting hotel motel funds, which are basically set up to pay for these kinds of projects. And if you can convince the powers to be, who are still interested in spending a very huge amount of money on a baseball stadium, instead to divert some of that money into a project of this nature. And I would just say, and you all speak up if you disagree with me, but whenever you go to the public, the county, the city, CVB, asking for money, the more you're able to leverage with your own fundraising that you've done, the more likely you are to get the support. Because there comes a time when that balance goes, you mean if we put up $500,000, there's a $14 million project downtown, suddenly that leveraging seems to make a whole lot of sense. And so that's the other thing that you'll find with all the governments, is the more they can find that their buck is really a little bit in a huge thing, the better off and the easier it is.
So clear this up for us so we don't go running off in different directions. Are you saying the CVB determines where the hotel motel tax money goes?
No. No, the county takes an accounting of that.
Right.
But the CVB clearly has an interest as it applies to those larger amenity-oriented projects that are tourism-driven, on sort of where those dollars.
That's where the CVB
get
funding comes
focused.
from, right?
Right.
It's the
Portion of their
hotel
funding.
motel, right.
Well, funding for the CVB, 48% of hotel motel tax collected, of the 6% hotel motel tax collected, goes to the Convention and Business Bureau.
Right.
The other 52% goes to Washington County to be used for whatever they deem necessary, be it economic development or tourism or sewer debt or whatever reason they want to use it.
But
the
notice,
purpose
notice
was-
where it doesn't go, though.
Right.
Notwithstanding, we have a number of hotels in the city limits. So-
Well, it is divided up amongst non-municipalities and other jurisdictions who get a certain portion every year of the county's portion of the hotel motel tax. But keep in mind, the county's whole portion of the hotel motel tax came from legislation passed in 2000
fund the
to
baseball
build a new
stadium.
baseball stadium.
Exactly.
So-
Exactly.
So
And then-
$19 million have been used by the county over the last 19 years
That would
to,
pay for the stadium.
for other issues other than what it was designed to do.
Okay.
So does the 52% that's dispersed, or that the county has control of, does that go out every year, or is any of that,
They take 52% in. I can't tell you what all they do with it,
okay,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
we'll find out.
Yep,
Okay.
there you go.
Okay.
That's the.
And the 48%, again, just so we understand,
48% is for the CVB
CVB,
to use
but-
for their operations, right?
so that's an operational expense.
Well,
That's their money that goes directly to the
to
CVB.
do whatever they want.
Okay. Okay.
Operations,
Advertising, yada, yada. Okay.
whatever.
Okay.
Been contributing money to various functions. I mean, you have a Patrick's Day run, you may find CVB's
Right.
contributed to that, to the bicycle races,
Right,
so.
okay, yeah, okay. Well, we have a better understanding now than we did when we walked in the door. So, okay. Any
Well-
other, I'm sorry.
I would suggest that you put together some information for us to see, be it financials or whatever, and a plan for fundraising. And, I was looking at the plans that we got, 4 million for 4 to 6 for the sheet of ice portion, and then 10 for the other portion.
Yeah, we won't do that.
It's a lot of money, yeah, the 10.
No question.
Yeah,
No
don't
question.
go near that, just
It's a
worry
big
about the
building.
ice. Worry about the ice.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. We're happy with that.
Just a comment based off of something he said with the court of public opinion. I do agree with that, as you see, and anytime Herald Mail writes about this or anything else, there's a constant, everyone always has an opinion. But something that I've heard consistently over and over and over since getting elected is our kids need something to do. And we hear it all the time. And I'll tell you, growing up in that ice rink, I'll say to people, would you ever go ice skating? And there's still a big part of this community that somehow does not know we have an ice rink. I literally had a citizen reach out to me a year ago that thought they had the greatest suggestion in the world, and it was that we should build an ice rink. I'm like, I have ice skates tattooed on my leg. Like, I grew up in that rink. How do you not know it's here? But maybe some type of community outreach, whether that be to the Girls Inc., Girls and Boys Club, all the different after-school programs. My daughter's in Washington County Public Schools. I know you guys have sent flyers home. I don't know, they're not reaching the parents at least sometimes, so maybe some
We
sort
get a
of
good response from those,
outreach.
by the
Do
way.
you?
Oh, yeah, we get a lot of
Well,
kids signed up.
you're clearly busy, so something's working.
Oh, yeah.
But just from a community outreach standpoint, to gain the buy-in of the public, maybe just some sort of after-school programs and stuff, offering like the learn to skate or learn to play hockey or whatever it may be, or just to remind everyone, we do have a thriving ice rink, thriving so much that we need a second sheet of ice, and here's why we're fundraising. Just maybe a good idea.
All right, we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're adjourned till 7 o'clock.